Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with our FY27 budget meeting with elected officials. Today's date is June 8, 2026. The time is 9:30 a.m. In attendance are Commissioners Everline, Duncan, and Matari. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. Public comment. Anyone wish to speak? Come on down.
Good morning, Commissioner Ron Parkman for the record. I'm just a taxpayer interested in the budget. I have a request to know if any of the departments have any full-time employees working any amount of time from home. And if so, then freeze hiring any new full-time employee until work from home has been eliminated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else wish to speak? Hearing nothing, we'll move into our business section. Our first item, FY27 budget review with our treasurer's office, and we have our treasurer, Steve Matheson.
Good morning. I think that we scheduled about 20 minutes for this session. I'm going to spend maybe half of that, a little bit less, and give you a quick overview, summary, try to point out some of the things that I think you might focus in on, and then open it up to questions so that we can address any questions you guys might have. So if that's okay. As you know, this is my last budget submitted.
We're smiling too much.
But I wanted to take an opportunity before I go through a budget, to make a couple of general comments. And it's worth what you guys paid for, which isn't much. We do, as a county, have a very strong balance sheet and a healthy fund balance, which puts us in a great position to manage the ups and downs of, the economy and tax receipts and all those unknowns. I've always referred to it as a fortress balance sheet. We're well defended and go, and I think address any situation. This includes a 2.5 months of reserve operating expenditures in a fund balance, which is great. We have no debt, and we have less than $1 million of leases outstanding, which is, I think, again, illustrates how strong our balance sheet is. In some of the conversations up to this point, I want to caution the county, maybe the board specifically, that let's not rely too much on interest income to fund ongoing operating expenditures. As you guys know, the volatility or the unknown of interest income is dictated by the general economy and so don't be too reliant on funding ongoing operations with that revenue stream. Another thing that I've seen in some of the presentations before the board this year and in past is this concept of unrealized market value gains or losses in the investment portfolio. And some of you guys probably are aware of, when I use the term unrealized market value gain or loss, what that represents is a theoretical market of the investment portfolio in the individual bonds that we have. In my 12 years, we have never sold a bond prior to maturity. We've never incurred a loss or a gain. What you guys may not know is that both the GFOA and GASB require that the accountants show or report this unrealized gain or loss on the financial statements. So it's required. However, when you're looking at forecasting interest rates, you should ignore that component, both in the positive and the negative, because we don't sell our instruments party. Cash flow that is expected will occur based on the coupons that we're receiving. So just try to keep in your mind, all right, I know that we're going to show in our financial statements as an annualized gain or loss, but it does not impact our forecasting interest rates. My budget submission today, or I should say introduction, because I think we're just starting the conversation, has no new programs or personnel requests. Operating expenses are slightly below last year's budget, so we'll call it flat. I want to go ahead and highlight a couple things that maybe in the review, if you did get a chance to look at this submission, may have come up. Travel. I'm increasing travel this year, actually this next year, because as you know, we'll have a new county treasurer. Historically, I have not traveled much or gone to conferences, primarily because I haven't seen the value, and candidly, I don't like to travel. I've spoken with the likely new treasurer and asked him whether he would want to attend what historically most new treasurers do and budget accordingly. So I've done that. So you'll see the travel expenses go up to reflect that. I think it's only appropriate that I'm not burden him with my bias of not traveling when he may want to come in and go to something called the New Treasurers Conference that the IACT puts on, as well as the IC conference. And there's some national conferences too, including Momentum, that I think he might want to go and meet some of the management personnel that are be making decisions on the systems that are used. Second, there's a $50,000 consulting amount that we're including. As you guys know, we implemented Simpatico. This is going to be the first time that we're going to generate a number of our reports, tax statements, and everything else under this new Simpatico fix. We expect there will be challenges, and so we wanted to reserve an amount that we thought would be appropriate to help us get through those challenges. We also have a $250,000 capital expenditure. This is for Momentum's platform version of the current system that we have. Now, this is a very quick and moving target. In fact, we were just receiving updates for the last couple of weeks, including Friday. To give you a brief background that you guys probably all already know, there's a number of counties in Idaho that use Momentum. And there's been a group talking, Joe's been our folk from Kootenai County. Momentum is going to be probably the likely platform that's going to be used throughout the state. And I won't go into all of the jockeying and political maneuvers that are going on, but there's this conversation between the state tax commission and all 44 counties, how the state tax commission is going to support systems going forward. Bonneville, Kootenai, Ada, and Canyon, as well as a number of others, are the big 4 counties that are all going to Momentum and are all likely going to go to platform. In fact, all of our counterparts are going before their boards during this budget process and asking for similar amounts. What's going on is Momentum would like the counties to show the good faith, so to speak, and put down kind of a deposit on what the actual cost is going to be for some future implementation of platform, so that we get this group discount. We got an updated price as of Friday. We included it in our actual budget submission. We're over the next several weeks likely going to bring IT into the conversation, as well as the assessor, get on one page, probably fine tune this amount. And by the time we get our budget adoption, have a good number. Now, as you guys know, Kootenai County is necessary to go to Simpatico. We don't want to be the first ones to go through the implementation of going to platform. So we're going to hope, and I think Canyon County is eager to be the first, as well as probably another one of those other big counties. And we hope that they will make all the mistakes and then we will follow using that knowledge. So the actual big spend will probably be sometime later, but this $250,000 amount is kind of like, okay, we've had a conversation with the board. We've got them agreed to pay the $250,000 a whole. Let's move forward together, these counties. go in more detail, if you like. $5.5 million in interest income. This is the same amount that we did last year. I've included a couple of attachments. One of them was, I thought it would be a good idea, since I'm leaving, to include kind of how I think about the forecasting process of interest income. So if you guys, and I'm not gonna review this because I think we want to keep things brief and to the point. But it's this section here, and essentially what it does is it demonstrates the assumptions that we're making, how we're forecasting what our investment balances are going to be throughout the year, and our forecasted interest rate that we're going to be earning on those forecasted balances. We made an assumption. I'm comfortable with the assumption. You guys might have a different view. If you do, reach out to me. Let's talk about it. And if the board wants to reconvene, we can reconvene and make a different assumption. I'm a little bit contrarian. I think actually interest rates are going to go up this next year. Most of the market, most of everybody I've spoken to thinks the rates are going down. If you follow what even happened today, yields jumped up. Goldman Sachs has reversed their decision. They used to say there was going to be one cut before the end of the year. They changed that last week. They're now saying the next move is upward. So I think rates are going to go up. I think the 5.5 is a good number. But again, if you guys want to review that, we can talk about it some other time. The other thing is, and Bruce, this is in response to your, I think, valid request. We're trying to track metrics of our office. So I've also included in here various metrics that we've been keeping track of that I think will help us in the future determine what appropriate staffing is. Now, I'm not convinced that this is exactly the form that we're going to be using going forward, but we begin the process. We've got some historical information in there. We'll probably fine tune it as we go, but it's at least a start. If you see something that's not in here, you'd like included, or you think we're missing the mark, just let us know. And again, we're gonna have a separate meeting if you want to go through that, or individually if you want to stop on, talk to the regional. I guess I'll finish and then turn it over to you guys. I know that the county is facing some significant cost increase with, the matrix inflation, and also our health insurance costs are increasing. Again, I think the balance sheet of the county is well positioned that we can withstand this. And I know Jill and I look forward to working with the board and, presenting at the end of August, or I think it's the beginning of August, a balanced budget that both the employees, or maybe more importantly, the taxpayers, thinks. So with that, I might have taken more than half of the time, but I'll turn it over to you and see, is there anything that you want us to talk about in a little bit more detail? Or any questions that you might have?
Thank you. Questions?
Just a couple. I'll start with Brandy. We have 3 months in reserves, correct? Correct. Yeah, so not 2.5, we have 3 months in reserves. So even better. I'm glad we got to do that while you were still here.
Good.
With that, the 5.5 million interest, I understand that we're only going to use 2 million for ongoing, and is that a comfortable number?
I think that's a comfort. It's at the higher end of comfort. Brandy and I spoke, as well as Clerk log. If you go back in history and look at what we've done in the past, we've had years that we've earned less than $1 million. So if you're relying on $2 million to fund ongoing operations, that's going to hurt us. I think that interest rates, when it was at $1 million, was at normally low. So I do believe $2 million is in the book. We're operating. My thought, and I think you guys share this, is that we're going to generate interest revenue above that number. Most of that money is dumping into our fund balance. We use for one-time expenditures such as capital expenses.
What about consulting? One like for a
Right.
sympathetic.
Yes, absolutely. One-time expenses. Yes.
And then the only other thing is, so you're asking for 250 right now for that placeholder, but the actual software might be 2.5 million.
Probably less than that on the upper end, yes. And again, I have not had the opportunity to consult with the assessor. Or IT, now that we have a new IT director. I'm thinking that they should probably be the primary point person in running with this number. Possibly even moving that $250,000 into IT. Because I think that's the way you guys have supposedly structured things like this, but whatever, however you guys want to proceed.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I had a question. Steve, is that for both sides, the assessor and treasurer, the 2.5?
I think you've done a fantastic job. Appreciate the approach to interest. And I appreciate the start with developing the operational metrics. Until we start measuring what we're doing, just can't make good decisions, especially on the first time. So, thank you. If there's no other questions or comments, we can conclude the first item and move on to the second. So thank you very much. All right, on to item 2, FY27 budget review, Coroner. Dr. Luke Johnson. The floor is yours.
What's that?
The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that. As is well known, we are beginning a new business process with the opening of the autopsy center. And so in light of that, what we wanted to do for clarity and for increased understanding of how we were going to break up the budget so that we could create the metrics necessary to be able to move forward with exactly what are the differences in our costs for operations with the autopsy center versus investigation versus the rest of the functioning of the office. At the same time, we're expanding into a building more so. So we've got increased janitorial costs and increased cleaning costs, et cetera, et cetera. And we've got new budgets associated with that. So what we've been trying to do is really break that down so that there would be a clarification. And so what we've done is, we've taken, for example, pathology, or we've taken professional services and put those all into the case of basically defining our operations moving forward as far as the autopsy center is concerned. And so we've taken safety supply, put those into investigation, et cetera, so that we can move forward with more clarity. So this is a transition for us at this time period. Now, what we've done in the past also is we've hit the mark of 66 autopsies for 3 years. And so with the county growing, et cetera, all we did is move it up to 70. So we budgeted as if we're anticipating 70. We're just entering into our season. Last year, in the last 3 months or the first quarter of this year, we had 10 autopsies. This year we had 11. But just this past weekend, or just yesterday, we had 6 deaths that came in, probably 2 autopsies. So, we're just entering into the summer season, which really increases the numbers, and we're anticipating that it's going to be a very conservative number at 70. Now, and we have hired Dr. Richardo from Spokane, and his prices in coming forward with that budget, his prices are $2,200 an autopsy. But he can only, there's about 6 to 8 weeks a year where he cannot. So we've also got contracts with, Dr. Nara from Seattle, et cetera. So when we basically estimate that what we're gonna have is about 60 autopsies, from Dr. Richardo, but then we're gonna have an additional autopsies with increased expenses from, Dr. Nara, et cetera. So what we did is originally we boosted it to, 70 autopsies at 2,200, but then realizing that what we're gonna need to do is in essence, take into account that he's going to not be here the whole year. That actually increased our number, from 154,000 to 172,000 for those purposes. Now, what we've also done is we also have additional expenses, for example, when we send cases over to Spokane, they had a CT scanner that they would just run the bodies through. We don't have a CT scanner in place, so we've had to contract with Northwest Specialty. And they charge us, so much per body part, and of course, they do that in the evening when no other patients are around. There's only one particular radiologist in the whole Inland Empire who will read the CT scan for people who have passed away. The regular radiologists don't read those, and so we're locked into the prices that he provides for us. And so what we've done is with our other professional services, what we've done is we've added in CT scans, and we based it on how many we've done so far this year, and then estimate what we're going to be, our total number of 70, and then how much we're going to do for the rest of the year, what toxicology is going to be. We have to do genetic testing, the pathology, and so basically we've tried to come as close as we could, but the numbers all based around the 70 with the additional contracts, because an important point too is that we're the cleaning for the autopsy room is very special. It's not like we can just bring in typical cleaning services to clean up the autopsy. We have, toxic supplies, et cetera, that need to be specially handled. So we have some additional contracts that we've been presented before that we need to run by the board to just, handle that. So we're at a point where we as much as we know from the rates that we're basing it on, what we've spent so far in the first quarter, estimating it out, we've come as close as we can to what we anticipate will be this year.
So what is the total all-inclusive cost on average for each autopsy?
For supplies, just $200. Well, yeah.
Total, like, what have you come up with per autopsy?
Yes,
As an average that we can use moving forward with, 60-10, I believe, between the doctor that charges 2,200 and some of these other contract doctors, the number of MRIs, what percentage, all of those things. What does that total dollar amount per autopsy come out to?
Probably in the range between 22 with a full autopsy to complex would probably be about 28.
Okay, so the $2,200 quoted earlier, that's all inclusive.
No. That's
Yes.
Dr. Richard.
Yeah, I'm talking about cleaning supplies.
Right.
No, that's what I was just gonna answer to you. So the supplies necessary per autopsy is 200.
Okay,
But we don't do a CT scan on each person. That's what our numbers we had submitted to you before. We do a CT scan, like so far when we calculated this out, I have this here, John. We had done, it's 300 per body part, so 12,000 annually. So if we divide 12,000 by 70, then we get, what is the average CT cost per person, if you want to break it down that way. And then the reading is we estimate for a whole year it'd be 11,200. So you divide that by 70, that'll be the average CT cost per person. Toxicology, we estimate annually to be 17,000, again, divided by 70. So if everything was just based on those ratios, we could come up with that number real quickly, but basically it's 2,200. And now also too, what's important is that doctors, our backup, doctors who also do autopsies, including their travel costs. What we're estimating is that their up price per autopsy is gonna go up to 4,000. So we're estimating him, Dr. Richard, of 2,200 for 60 cases, and then them for 4,000, including hotel, travel, air flight, et cetera, and their costs are higher, to be $4,000.
Yeah, and I understand that this is the first year you're kind of figuring it out.
Mhm.
So we're just going off the estimates, but it just kind of helps to understand that. I don't think anyone in the board really knows the detail as much as opposed to, you know, what can we expect as an average number
Okay,
for an autopsy based upon your calculations?
sure.
And it sounds like it's gonna come in somewhere in the neighborhood of a little bit higher, around 2,500 to 3,000, maybe a tad more.
Exactly. I mean, I can add up all those numbers and give you that number that it all adds up to.
So, and then we're estimating what we think. Now, as far as autopsies go, is there a specific criteria that, like a checklist that determines whether a death is transferred to autopsy or not? Or is there a subjective component as well to determine whether or not an autopsy should occur?
Oh, there's a subjectiveness to it for sure, because in the end, I mean, there are some requirements, of course, if there's something nefarious involved, it's could be a legal case or potential murder, et cetera, et cetera. Car accidents, which may end up in court, anything that's gonna end up in court, I mean, those are pretty much automatic. But if we have an individual who does not have a long medical record and suddenly they die, we need to take a step and do an autopsy with those individuals to make sure that nothing nefarious happens.
Understood.
Because they had no medical reason for them.
Understood. So there's a lot of intent.
Exactly. And that's why every case is different. That's why we sit around and go through every case and discuss them, because it's not black and white. Even when the tremendous experience our office has, it's not black and white.
Well, I think, you know, unless someone on the board disagrees, man, I think your best estimates that are reasonable, that are based upon historical data to the degree you can, would be a good number for an operations number. And then if you have an anomaly this year, then we would look at, you know, that's where fund balance comes in.
Sure.
For those kinds of things.
Exactly. I mean, if there's an event that comes where there's a mass fatality with, one bus. One bus, I mean, that's why we can't predict that kind of stuff. And of course, we go in the past, but yeah, exactly. We know our numbers quite well, but we can't predict the future.
Well, no one expects you to, but you know, with enough numbers, your probability is very high, and that's really the key. You can't predict the anomalies. If anyone could, I would be asking for the lottery numbers.
Yeah, we're in Las Vegas right now.
Yes, exactly. But your historical trends can give you a very good idea of what to expect the following year.
Sure.
With the exception of a certain event or two.
Exactly. Yeah, just what we've averaged out, we could come real close to a number. I mean, we'd be within $10. We've gone through absolutely everything as far as what our costs are, so we can average that out and get you a number up real close.
I'm sorry if I took you off track from your presentation, so.
No, absolutely. No, so I'm, that was pretty much where we're going. We're done with that. Now, the one last thing, there was some question about, some increased costs is you're concerning our, continuing education and travel with our staff, but what's happened is we needed to do two things is, two staff members that are assisting in the autopsies. We want to make sure that they have the most up-to-date training as far as being, even though they both have experience in being autopsy assistants, we want to send them to, conferences where they can get, up-to-date information on collecting, et cetera, because that changes all the time. And then in addition, we've got to maintain our accreditation, we all have to have our continuing education units. And what's been happening in the past is that we had several people who didn't need to get their units, continuing education units, so they didn't. But now this upcoming year, they need to get them. So that's why We have increased costs there. One other increased cost is that what we wanted to do, is have a couple of open houses once we're up and functioning, because we believe that we'll be able to provide a better service than, Spokane, honestly, and that, what our, once the surrounding counties see what we're doing and how our operations are, we wanted to invite them to come by so that they can see, our operation, and I've already been approached by people in counties further away than I anticipated, who said they'd want to send them to us. And so we just thought, let's go ahead and invite, because then that's monies that's kept within the state, to help with our operations as well. So that's why we thought a couple of open houses will be more than worth the time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments?
When's the next, or not next, but when is the new facility supposed to be ready for?
With the most recent information, we just had a meeting last Tuesday. We're meeting with the construction company, every 2 weeks officially. It looks like mid-October is the date they're estimating now. We were, put on hold for a few weeks because Avista needed to bring in, a new gas line, and nobody wanted to do anything until Avista had done their gas line. So now that that's in, and they said, don't worry, we'll pick up the pace a lot, and it really didn't dramatically change their estimated schedule anyway. It was going to be pretty much in October.
Let's see, I think we're okay. Well, actually, it's just one question. Were you able to get the spreadsheet that, we, worked on Friday that kind of showed
Also,
the challenges?
Yeah, I think I know the green.
Right?
This one here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, even if the board were to take the full 3%, there still might be a need to cut a little bit. That's something that there's still some places you could look at or try to sharpen the pencil some, depending.
Okay.
And I realize you're in a different situation because you're starting up something
Right.
that, we have to do. So
Right.
it's understood. It's
Right.
this
So I
is
appreciate that.
the basic framework of, where all the electeds and the board are kind of at. And that there's a physical limitation that we're all beyond that right now.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, we've got out several things, but I'll take another look again, see where else we can.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Brady?
Dr. Duke, did you want to discuss your non-capital request of $10,000 for the street signage and the telephones?
Yeah, exactly. Which, we have with the new autopsy center, when it opens up, we have new phones that we need to put in that center. And the phones for the system, of course, are not cheap. It's not like we can go down to a local store and buy them. And we're also just adding a sign that's out on the street so that when people are, because there's a number of people who aren't going to necessarily know where the autopsy center is, especially if they're coming from other counties. So we're putting a sign on the street. I think that one was Route 7 or something like that.
7,000.
Yeah, and so we used a sign company that was used with the courthouse, and
And the phones, don't we have extra phones with IT that should just be able to connect up, or is there something different with these
We've been quoted, I think they're $800 piece.
for the phones,
Homes.
for SIP phones?
yeah,
Do you have any special needs with your phones that go beyond just
no,
ringing,
these are just the
voicemail?
typical county phone. This is.
Did I give you that quote? Yeah.
Yeah. That's an IT question. We just, I'm gonna take all that.
Can we use interest for that, since it's not really gonna be ongoing?
It's right now, it's budgeted as an ongoing cost, so in the 2 million of interest, we have 2 million ongoing costs right now, so. But this is one of them that would be covered by interest.
Okay, so we can cover that by interest.
Yeah, we just have too many ongoing costs,
Sure.
like the 2 million is not enough.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So,
I know, I'm
Yeah.
aware.
Do your staff get cell phones?
We have one on-call cell phone and Dr. Duke has a cell phone.
Okay, but
Right.
the county don't have cell phones as issued for,
Not each staff member.
okay.
No, one for the rotating group and then one for me, so then I don't, the coroner's office is not functioning on my private cell phone. You know, I want to keep the two businesses.
Understood. I'm just saying, if we had that, we could forward calls.
Right,
We could use soft phones, which are software based,
right,
connected to the laptop or, you know, there's just a lot of different options depending on your needs.
Mhm.
What's most important are your needs, and then figuring out what the cost effective way is to achieve that.
The 4 phones would be in the new autopsy suites. So it's,
It's additional.
yeah, they're just additional phones.
You got it.
and what we've also done to maintain it's really important to us to maintain our accreditation because it's so rare across the nation. So we've actually contacted the accrediting organization to have them review our architectural plans. And so to make sure that we're staying in alignment with them so that we don't lose that. And then what that'll do, once we're the only grant in the nation for autopsies is functioning autopsy centers. So once we are, I mean, there hasn't been a grant come out this year yet, but when it does come out, we're functioning. So I could apply for it right now, but that's why it's so important for us to keep the accreditation because that puts us at a higher echelon of competition for that grant that comes out being accredited. So that's why that's been very important to us and that's integrated into the building structure.
Okay, well, we should just look at your one-time expenses, and if they're listed as ongoing, then we need to move them into a different category.
Sure.
So they're not lumped in there because it becomes harder to discern.
Sure.
What is the one time if it's lumped in there together.
Right.
You know, mixed.
Yeah.
So, okay.
But I think it was moved to capital, I think, right? It was moved to capital, right?
Well, it's only 7,000 for the signs and 3,000 for the phones.
Right.
So they're considered non-capital.
Oh, not capital.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was-
But we can make the decision right now to pay for them off interest. Interest rate. Is that all right?
For the phones, definitely. For the signs, yes, and we just have to kind of triage that expense that as with all the other asks. Not to say, I'm not saying no.
It's just a one-time.
Understood.
Yeah, there will be no budget change. It's already considered as funded as it is currently.
Mhm.
Anything that's not being funded with fund balance and being funded with other revenues or interest, so.
Yeah, we would just have to see how that breaks out with the spreadsheet we put together, because I think it's all kind of included in there, right?
The spreadsheet with the requests from like the official.
From Friday.
Yeah.
So, okay. Any other questions or comments? Dr. Duke, thank you.
Thank you.
Wish you luck on this. It's a big undertaking. Now, but it sounds like you've got it all under control, so good job.
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't know I would be a developer. Thank you.
You're starting a business soon. Thanks. Next up is item 3, FY27 budget review assessor. Assessor Kovacs, come on down.
No longer have microphone.
It's shown been for a while, the whole system was.
Take now, so just speak louder if you could. please. The phone or the camera's right over to your left.
Commissioners, Bailey Kovacs, Kootenai County Assessor. I have my staff here with me, Chief Deputy Michael Rutledge. I will make the introductions and then defer to my staff to present the budget. Just some preliminary comments. I did see your the Excel spreadsheet about the budget challenges and the request to see if we can move the needle a little bit. And I think there are some numbers within our budget that we can talk about accommodating that. There's two significant, I'm gonna call them placeholders in our budget. There's the legal expense, legal expenditures for the pending litigations. There are presently 9 lawsuits. These are the same plaintiffs that have been in lawsuits with the county since before I became assessor in 2020. It's actually expanded to 9 lawsuits. One of those lawsuits is an appeal, which is going to be very significant. Um. To a particular lawsuit, I won't talk about the plaintiff's names. Um. And then the other ones are just ongoing lawsuits. So, the, the budget, statute requires that we have funding in our budget in order to make those expenditures. And so we do have, I believe, some reserves in our budget. I think what we need to do, what I'd like to impress upon the board is that we make forget the terminology, but we make a reserve budget so that we can tap into those reserve funds. So that as a matter of record, we've got funding to fund those lawsuits, the defense of those lawsuits. The other placeholder is the consultant XTR. A moment ago, Treasurer Matheson was here talking about simpatico. My understanding is that we're seeing some significant changes here in Kootenai County in our IT department. We're not going to have the institutional staff, institutional knowledge that we've had here in place from the time that the system was implemented. That was one of the things that I had anticipated, which is why I embarked on simpatico, which was a sort of a bridge solution to a newer system. Steve Matheson mentioned a little bit about the politics of Idaho and migrating to a new system. I speak to you with my prior experience as a former purchasing director for about over 20 years, that the migration from one existing system that we now have to a new system is not necessarily a slam dunk. They are different systems. There's been some discussions about a sole source. From a procurement standpoint, I don't believe a sole source justification can be sustained to migrate to this new system. It is entirely a separate system, a different system. There really is no straightforward migration path, so it's going to be a significant change. The Idaho State Tax Commission, which is vital in supporting the system, they are subject to their own procurement rules, and in terms of whether they can support a system, it would make every bit of difference as to whether or not a sole source can be justified or not. So I don't know that it's going to be necessarily a slam dunk, and the values that I was given when I was looking into this was along the lines of what Steve Matheson was saying, anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 million dollars. That number has very little bit. And so the placeholder in our budget, as we embark moving forward, we're going to need, I believe, some funding for a consultant, which I believe XTR can serve that role, that capacity. In our budget for simpatico, I believe we had at the end of 2024 about $240,000 surplus over the funding that we were given in our budget for consulting services. But then the treasurer moved forward with their version of simpatico, and we had to incur additional costs to maintain currency on our version of simpatico. And so that ate into that $240,000. I believe we have about 100,000 remaining now. And so that's in reserve to my understanding, and I would impress upon the board that we need to preserve some funding. I believe we've earmarked about $135,000 in the budget for XTR. Probably about $100,000 is already in reserves for that. So I would request that the board at least preserve $30,000 to $40,000 for the unexpected expense that we might encounter as we work through the bugs. There are going to be problems. Even if we had never embarked on simpatico, there would be issues. There's always going to be issues with data and computer systems. And so we're going to need some resources to fund that. The legal expense, let me jump back to that. I believe we earmarked about $140,000. We could take a look at tapping into reserves, but I would impress upon the board to do a budgetary reserve. You did it with the East Side District lawsuit against Kootenai County for the a few years back. Treasurer Matheson wanted to retain late fees and collection fees for property taxes that were not collected. That resulted in a lawsuit. And so there's an example there on how you can preserve funding in the budget, I would ask that the board do that for the legal expenses. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to my staff.
Morning. So we put together the presentation here on the budget for the assessor's office. With a particular format, and the format is largely showing you past actuals compared to the present budgeted amount, with the intention of trying to highlight the difference and explain away what the difference might be as we have those, as we see the go through to those. Let's see, and then, and of course, there's also the intention with this to help focus our direction towards areas where the assessor's office can modify budget to help with the overall balance. Starting with the B budget, the last 3 years have seen year-over-year declines in both the adopted B budget as well as the expended B budget. The B budget actual for 2026 is projected to be around 415 to 450. You'll see there in the chart that you have a number on the actual. The orange is actual. The blue is budgeted, the adopted budget for that year, and then the green at the end is the proposed. So that 184 actual in 2026 is not including several things that we expect that will land still in 2026. So division by division, there's consistency between the budget actuals of the past and the budget proposed, with the reval division being an exception. So going through those budgets that are fairly consistent, you do see the 3-year steadier decreasing use of the budget dollars. We're going to continue to work towards being good stewards of money. Looking at the admin totals, you see the 2026. So what you have is from left to right under each category, admins and surveyors and DMV and land records. You see from left to right in each of those groupings, the successive years. So 23 to 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27. And from the 26 to 27 differential on the admin budget, admin is projected to land at about 22 this year. Okay, that's where we think. And then there is about a $13,000 additional training budget to try to set the incoming assessor up your training budget that might be needed for the assessor. What you see with the surveyor's budget number is a cyclical equipment maintenance work that has to be done. And that number is a several $1,000 number. Looking at the DMV totals, you see that the DMV, the Coeur d'Alene DMV is fairly close to where it's expected this year to land, or sorry, it's actually going to be a little under where we expect this year. And as such, we may come back and make a request because the DMV is covered by admin fees, their own admin fees. So we may come back to the board later and to request an addition to the admin fees. So then the DMV Post Falls is expected to land around 26. DMV Post Falls is largely affected by bills for water and bills for electricity. So where we've seen it land every year is kind of where we're expecting this year. But as energy costs, if energy costs are going up, you're gonna see the DMV Post Falls number being higher than what it may have historically been. The last is land records. It's got a proposed $14,000 higher than usual than the actual, and that's due to some training requirements for the new and regular employees, and as well as some of the expended costs not used so far today. So we'll get into this, looking at reval. Reval is, got significant adjustment to it. And what you can see there is, if you look at the pie chart in the center, you'll see, you've got, the two largest pieces of that being what, Mr. Kovacs identified as, legal and the contract with SDR. So about 70% of the budget is legal and software support. It's budgeted here, but I wanted to make sure that we're not double dipping somewhere and that we're asking for a budget that is already allocated somewhere else. So the XDR contract is here we did it as balance of contract at $147,000. And we understand that that's already be funded. But we're budgeting here, we're earmarking it here as well. The legal process is slow, but we expect expenditure as resolution has become a resolution on things. This budget includes the anticipated costs and challenges in the process, as well as potential challenges we anticipate from the same commercial owners. There's room for adjustment in that budget, just so you know. The Aumentum lease last year moved from IT to the assessor's office. And that's about a $50,000 lease that we had here. The potential for improvement to this budget, if the board needed to look into this and tidying it up, you see that potential for improvement being anywhere between 100,000 and 200,000, but it assumes that funding for the legal is found that way. In summary on the B budget, division by division, the assessor's fee budget aligns with actual over the last 3 to 4 years, the exception of some training costs and the much larger reval budget as proposed. The budget amount of $642,584 can be improved upon by the following adjustments: tightening of legal fees and or increased use by county attorneys, removal of XDR contract because it's already funded, or reduction of the XDR contract to forecasted use, knowing that the contract will carry a balance in future years. We'll take a look at the A budget overview. So I pulled Frank's numbers there, which align with ours. In 2026, the assessor's office has hired appraisal 1, a cadastral mapping specialist 1, and was hired that specialist, and is interviewed with positive results for another appraisal 1 position. There are a total of 7 open positions in the forecasted budget that we see of 6.9 million. The cadastral 1 mapping specialist 1 is the one we just hired for, so that's one of those. Then there was a cadastral mapping specialist 2, 2 appraiser 3s, 1 appraiser 2, 1 appraiser 1, and 1 temp seasonal staff. We wanted to propose that we close the cadastral mapping specialist 2 position and the temp seasonal staff position while maintaining both the anniversary steps and the A budget request proposed for fiscal year 27. We think that doing this will reduce the budget to 6.8 million. Some details here around the A budget. So it's difficult to hire for the appraiser 3 and 2 positions. It's yielded very few applicants. We have proposed accepting the grade changes to appraiser 2 and appraiser 3 while we continue to fill appraiser 1 positions and train staff. We feel growing it through the department is going to yield better results. At the start of fiscal year 26, the assessor's office requested an additional commercial appraiser 3, as well as a grade change from appraiser 2 to appraiser 3 for 1 commercial appraiser. We were asked to return mid-year for the same request. And in light of the A budget constraints, we would like to look internally at our efficiencies before making that mid-year ask of a commercial appraiser 3, the additional commercial appraiser 3. But we'd like to maintain the mid-year ask for the grade change as well as the budget increase for the position. And we can return mid-year fiscal year 27
if our review shows an additional commercial appraiser is. And then lastly, we'd like to maintain the DMV grade of 10.6 to grade 11.6 increase, and the mapping grade 4.4 to grade 4.5. We'd like to try to maintain those if we can. But that's our review of the budget.
Thank you. Questions?
Probably just some clarifications. It wasn't really clear to me. For FY27, do you need money for XTR? Completely separate from the Augmentum platform.
So I will say yes, we need money for XTR because we're still continuing to work through some details on the Simpatico implementation.
There are always implementation, there are always issues with data, laws change. The state works on patches and scripts and updates to the systems. Because of the history, we've encountered some problems here, some unique one-off situations. So I think part of the contract that we have in place with XTR is support. And I just think it would be prudent to have that in place.
So
Yes,
what do you need for FY27, and is that what is reflected in your ask?
that was the $135,000 that I had actually put in the budget as a placeholder. So to answer
FY27, 135.
135, but I also prefaced it by saying, I believe we have about 100,000, just under $100,000 in our reserves that was already in our budget for the previous year that we've already levied for. So
FY26.
yes, in this, and I believe actually going back to FY25.
So it's, we have to look at
So I
them
think it's about,
just individually, each year, completely separate.
right,
Just want to know how much you are expecting to need for FY27.
So we actually had the number 147 in there, but if 135 and 147, I feel like are reasonable amounts that should continue. A lot of contractors support what we need.
and I concur with that.
Treasurer Matheson, did you have something you wanted to add here?
Yeah, I think there's some confusion going on, and maybe you can clarify this. My understanding from budgetary law for public and county is if you don't expend the funds in the year that it was appropriated, it is gone. From a budgetary standpoint, it's dumped into a fund balance. So the reserve amount that you're referring to is gone. You have to ask for the total amount, even though you didn't spend it, the total amount in the fiscal year 27, and get that approved by the board. And you can't consider it as reserves. That's my understanding. Randy, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. You're only allowed to roll forward your capital budget from year to year, but the way that we've done it, like in 26 with the assessor's office, is we funded the request for XTR from their fund balance, knowing that in the previous year, they returned their unspent money to their fund balance. So we were gonna pull it back out of fund balance to help fund the next year's budget request for XTR. So we can do the same thing again in FY27, use the Fund 46 restricted fund balance. And I'm seeing in the budget, there's $112,000 for XTR master agreement, and then 35,000 for the Augmentum Marshall Swift. So that total line item is 147,000.
And what Brandy is describing is essentially what I was asking for.
So the board could vote to move to use the Fund 46 fund balance, I guess, for that XTR agreement.
That's fine with me.
So we want to talk about the legal expenses as well. It may require a new, or not a new, but an executive session, some other time this week, so we can hear specifics. Because I know we haven't gotten an update lately on some of the cases. So that's what I would recommend. So I don't know if you want to wait until a different date to cut that line item, or just schedule that executive session.
We can schedule the executive session and hear more about it. I think it just ultimately comes down to no one has a crystal ball on these things, right? So, you know, do we have to put that much in there? If these are more one-time expenses, I think, given the nature of it, even though there is a recurring component with some of the landowners. But without knowing where we are with it, because I think the last time we talked about this was what, 4 or 5 months ago, 6 months ago?
I think part of the challenge is the plaintiff. It's their lawsuit to prosecute, and they really haven't. The one of the plaintiffs, we went into mediation at the end of December 24. You were there. What we agreed upon and discussed, we're supposed to get a signed agreement the next day.
Yeah, I don't want to take up the time now.
Okay.
We'll see.
It's just drifting on. They haven't prosecuted, they haven't pursued their case.
Well, we just had another mediation was postponed. So, yeah, it just would be good to see all the cases, where we're at in each thing, so we can properly budget for next year.
Good at that. Yes, Brandy.
I was going to, unless I missed it, did you present your personnel request for DMV? For the, was that your presentation?
Yeah, we mentioned it there at the very end.
Oh, okay. So they're requesting to regrade the DMV manager position from a grade 10 to a grade 11. Yeah, just wanted to make sure that was as well as the 5 request for the departments. And then you mentioned freezing a cadastral position. If you could, I don't have that request.
Yeah,
If you could just send me the position number, that way I can get that incorporated into the budget.
Any other questions?
Did you want to make any cuts today or no? Did you want to talk about any of that?
Well, I mean, we're looking at, I think with the assessor's office, somewhere between 741 and 616,000 that we need to kind of look at.
I also, and for those who just for DMV, I just wanted to mention also, for the presentation that we do plan to propose another dollar increase to our title admin fee for FY27, just for additional costs incurred for benefits, step increases, salaries, that kind of things that comes into account as the budget cycle goes on. So we're anticipating that being in our budget for FY27.
So it's not in it now.
It's not in, it's a proposed, we're going to propose that be added to our admin fee, title admin fee, going into FY27 to be able to cover.
But you budgeted in the system increased revenue,
Yes.
anticipating that.
Yes, I did put it in there.
Okay, so
It is in my numbers. I'm just letting you know that that's including the dollar increase that we can put into that time as a proposal.
I think it would be incumbent upon the office to look at where you can cut down to the bare minimum that's reasonable. Just, you got the spreadsheet, so we have physical capacity issues here with the dollars. It's not because we're saying to any one office, you need to cut, the others don't have to, but it's, we all need to. And then we'll just discuss it at the next meeting. Any other concerns or thoughts?
No, I think mostly the legal and then just making sure that we have the proper amount coming out of fund for XTR in the future and that nothing is budgeted for the that overlaps or duplicates what the treasurer's asking for. That.
Yes. And then we just have to, and maybe we should look at putting that into the IP budget, so it's in one place and not two. You know, Assessor, did you have something you wanted to say? No, okay, all right, well, thank you very much, appreciate it. Okay, next up, you want to take the 5 or 10 minute break real quick? Okay, we got some people who would like to. So it's 10:34, we will reconvene at 10:40. It's 10:44. We're back from our recess. We'll move on to our next item, and that is item 4, FY27 Budget Review District Court. So Cheesebro.
Thank you. So this is the Road Trial Court Administrator here with my deputy trial court administrator, Jessica. So we provided to the commission a binder of sort of information that was relaying maybe not changes, but areas in our budget that I thought was important either for you guys to be aware of the change in request, or there's information pertaining to that line item that I thought was important for you guys to have. As it relates to potentially some law changes or some other issues. So what I anticipate, or what I'm planning on doing is just kind of highlighting what those are, going through that, providing a little bit more clarity on that. The first document you received is the Idaho Judicial Branch priorities for fiscal year 26-29, or excuse me, 27-29. I just provide that as sort of an overview of where the Idaho judiciary is headed and what their priorities are. The first line item of relevance in that, well, in our budget as well as presented to you is 7975, and that's for transcripts. I would note that we did reduce the requested funds for that line item. However, I didn't reduce it as much as, well, actually did initially reduce it more, and then realized with the recent case law Doe v. Doe, which came out in May of 2026, that there is some financial responsibility that counties may be looking at taking up in relation to that case. Specifically, if you have the opportunity to review it, and it is rather lengthy, page 23 talks about the financial responsibility for constitutionality, required representation of indigent parents in private termination cases. So in layman's speak, what that's concerned about is the due process that applies to parents that may be indigent and not having an attorney. There is a possibility with that, although it doesn't specifically mandate it, that the counties may be responsible for footing attorneys' bills for those indigent parents. I did not necessarily budget much for that because it was not made clear in this case law. However, on page 25 of that same case, there was a finding of indigent parents in private termination cases that are not represented at public expense. The county would be responsible to pay for the costs and fees of preparation of the record and transcript. Because of that specific finding, I did increase back up to $15,000. Yes, the transcript line item. So there were some changes there that made based on that case law. The next line item, and I think the one that is of most significance for our budget, is 8060, and that's the weapons and self-defense equipment line item. We did ask for a substantial increase in that line item from $3,040 to $19,540. The basis for that request is to provide ballistic vests for our screeners as well as our bailiffs. This is something that has come from from screeners and bailiffs as a concern for their safety. Contained in the information in front of you is the costs for the vests that are proposed to be purchased. There are 12 bailiffs, and the vest that they would need around about $1,000, $1,128. And then the screeners would be able to have a cheaper option at $789, and there's 6 screeners. I did include in the information 2 letters from 2 of your employees, 2 bailiffs, talking a little bit about why that request has been made. It does just come down to an increased, they're seeing increased conflicts, increased concern for their safety, and they have made a request to have this provided to them. There is a possibility that that cost could be a little less if there's a bulk discount. I wasn't able to get into that too much because we didn't know if that's going to be approved or not. But that is the estimated cost to provide that to those employees. 8199 is the other professional services line. We didn't make any request for changes in this line item. However, it's worth noting that with the use of my understanding, the intended use of the opiate settlement fund, that the actual cost to this line item may be less. Since this is the first year that we will be looking at utilizing that fund as part of this drug testing line item, I've asked for the same amount in there, but if everything goes well, we should not be using that full amount. I also included in your information, and I'm pretty proud of this, there's some orders or some judgments And you all don't have the full judgment because I didn't think it was necessary to provide that, but the judges have been ordering reimbursement for the drug testing costs this year. That was a big push from our office to try to recoup some of those costs. And our judges were really good about getting on board with that and issuing those reimbursements at the time of the sentencing judgment. So I just provided 5 sample judgments so you guys could see that the judiciary is taking their fiscal responsibility serious as well when it comes to these issues. The next line item that I discussed is 8103, that's legal services. We didn't ask for any change in this line item either. This is where we pay for our small claims mediation. I do think it's worth noting that the rate of settlement with small claims mediation is about 77%. So we are seeing a lot of cost savings per case with the use of this mediation. I think also of significance for this line item is the Senate Bill 1330 that was recently passed by legislation, which has made small claims actions from $5,000 to $15,000. What that effectively is going to mean is that we are going to see a lot more small claims being filed because, maybe not being filed, but being put into small claims because of that increased threshold. So it is a really big savings for our county to use that mediation. And my hope is the settlement rate will continue to remain high with that change in legislation. We did decrease the next line item I discussed, 8140, professional reference material. We were able to get out of a 3-year contract early because we were not utilizing that Thompson Reuter contract any longer. And so my staff worked really hard with them to convince them that this was something that we should be let go to let release from contract, and we were able to succeed at doing that. So while it's only $2,000, and I know that's not much in the scheme of what you're looking at, I'm still pretty proud of our ability to negotiate that with them and to terminate that contract for everyone. 8250 jury payments. Unfortunately, this is an area where we continue to see significant growth. So we did ask for an increase from $86,600 to $95,000. This is based on the increased civil filings that we're seeing, not only in Kootenai County, but statewide. The unfortunate part about not only the increased civil filings is that we're seeing an increase in complexity of the cases that are being filed, for example, in the family law realm. We have an increased likelihood statistically of when a case is filed that it will proceed to trial at this time. So because of that, we did budget or ask for an increased budget in jury payments line item. Seminar and professional associations, A308. We did not ask for an increase in funds in that line item, but it is important for this you guys to know that there's going to be TASER certification, CPR, APD research, and range master research that will be coming out of this line item this year. There's some recertifications with our bailiffs and court security that are due this year. And so I think, that line item should be able to capture that without any increased costs, but I just wanted you guys to be aware of that as well. The last information I provided pertains to treatment court training and travel. I would note that this year there is no Idaho conference. This fiscal 2027, there's one this year. But the All Rise conference is in Maryland, so there is going to be an increased cost to travel that distance. I would also note that we will have a new DUI court judge. And that, well, it doesn't come out of this travel and training, it would be the district court travel and training. We do have a new court assistance officer and a new family court services manager. So training is very important for all of our new people in these areas. So I'm really proud to tell you guys that we have our cumulative B budget has decreased in the amount of $157,671. So we were able to cut back in areas to make that decrease, which I don't know that a lot of people have been able to succeed in doing this year. We are not asking for any new programs. We're not asking for any changes to the A budget. And we do anticipate that the state revenue source for our treatment courts, court assistant officer, are projecting to remain the same. Obviously, state budget finalized in July. So With that, we can entertain the questions you guys have.
Thank you. Questions?
So a question for Brandy, on the summary that you provided, it shows that the health insurance and steps, but it still shows a $235,000 increase in the budget. But the health insurance and steps don't add up to that.
It's taking into account the new base budget, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. It's, yes, I think it's the difference between the 4,234 and then 4,413. That's it.
Thank you.
Any questions? Good questions. Thank you. All right. So the next item is item 5. Budget review and clerk. You want to go ahead and do that now?
Do that now, it's preparing, I've got my signature. Yeah, this for sure. I'm never sitting here, and then he's, so, yeah, she's done. Sounds like.
So, FY27 budget review and clerk. And we have the clock here.
Thank you, commissioners. Well, I have all my department heads here with us today, and we created. Each of them kind of created their own presentation and made combine everything, and we're gonna walk through, and if you have any questions, let's go, let us know. I do have packets I did print out, they're stapled based on each department. If you have any questions as we're doing this, just let us know. So we're gonna start off with a simple one with the clerk's and chief deputy travel budget for fiscal year 2027. This is pretty much staying flat. It's a $9 reduction. In fiscal year 24 and 25, we adopted about $13,541. And we weren't traveling as much, so I went into the system and did transactional details again to make sure to compensate for our travel. There are times my chief deputy had a wedding in September, she next year, and this last one she did, but overall, since the last 2 years, I've reduced it about $2,000. So we're coming in a $9 savings there for fiscal year 26 over 27. And then district court, our district court director and manager have made this presentation we're gonna walk through. This is probably gonna be the most detailed and with ask and reductions of staff event.
Good morning, commissioners. Thank you for allowing us this time to present our FY27 budget. We just wanted to start off with the court's mission statement and just some history about the courts, just to substantiate how important the justice system is, as well as the services that we do provide to the community as a whole. And so that first slide you have before you just kind of goes over some of the core elements of the courts and what we do provide, as well as both ours here in Kootenai, as well as the Idaho State Court mission statements, just with regards to justice as a whole. If you move to the next slide, just providing a little bit of history of the courts. We are broken up into the 7 districts, with us being at the District 1 there in the Panhandle. It kind of just breaks up those different counties, while there are 44 counties within Idaho. Just kind of shows you the division that we have throughout the states, even though we are now on a unified court system, which has brought some great benefits for us as a court.
Okay, and then we're gonna get into some statistical analysis of the reasoning behind our ask. So as you can see here on this slide, this is the total amount of cases filed in our county for civil, criminal, and infraction caseloads from a period of 2021 to 2025. And I do want to just note that our period runs calendar year, not on the same timeline as our fiscal year. So you can see in 2021, we had roughly about 29,000 cases, and then there was a drop in case filings. In 2022, we do attribute a lot of that to COVID, because we had stay-at-home orders. A lot of people were coming in and filing cases. And then you can see there's a dramatic increase in 2023, of when cases are filing again. More civil cases are being filed, and then steadily we have increased up until 2025. And then additionally too, this slide goes over our I-Court filing and serve documents. I just want to note that
when we reference envelopes and filings, those are individual documents that are being filed into those cases. So as you can see from 2025 and all the way down back into 2021, we have had a shift in filings. So in 2021, we had 133, we're ending up in 2025 at 130,000. However, I want to make it known that because those are the total envelopes, there could potentially be 10 documents in each of those envelopes. So those are all being filed into one substantial case though.
And some of that is due to recent change within the costs that are now essentially the court previously covered for those envelope fees are now passed along to pro se filers and the attorneys. And so they are packing more into those envelopes versus filing them as those filings come in. And moving on to just some of the things that have changed or increased those caseloads and filings. As we all know, population growth has contributed significantly. As of July 1st of 25, there was an estimated 191,864 people living in the county. That's roughly almost a 40% increase since 2010. For our numbers. One other thing that significantly impacted the courts was the one rule, so one family, one judge rule. So that's across the board for not only juvenile court, but that also filters into adult court. And so the complexity of trying to schedule and anticipate when somebody in a particular family may come into the court system and then shuffle all of those to make sure that there's cases in front of a judge is pretty complex in that scheduling. Just to kind of highlight a few more actual percentages to give you kind of that round picture. 68% of the courts in 2025 reported staffing shortages. This is something that we are seeing in a lot of our committees and our groups throughout the state, that this is a statewide issue. 48% of court professionals indicate that they lack the sufficient time to complete their duties, so being rushed through particular tasks. 45% noted that they have increased caseloads or just that feeling of more cases to manage. 39% listed the complexity of the cases. So the length of time in those cases are taking longer to hear from start to finish. And so just the level of, increased hearings, the number of hearings that might be attributed to that. And then 24 observed delays and continuances in order to hear the matters. And so all of that cumulatively affects the community, the public, how fast we are able to provide that justice from start to finish for a case. And so it does start to add up and affect the entire system.
And then just to kind of touch on that a little bit more. So these are some of the challenges that I've been facing. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. These are some of the challenges that are actually facing us at district court right now. So as you've heard, our caseloads are going up. Just in the last 2 or 3 months, we've actually hired 15 new staff members. That's due to retirements. Additionally, when we gain new judge positions, that increases the staff that we need to have because we need to have a judicial assistant. That then pulls from our current staff. And so it's just kind of this trickle effect. Additionally, like Holly mentioned, we do have longer wait times. We have primarily worked through the backlog of those COVID cases, but now since we do have an increased population, we're seeing more cases being filed, and with more cases being filed and less staff that are trained to file those as well, we're having longer times of processing. And then additionally too, we have our own technology difficulties. We've had several changes within the last 3 years. It's almost as if we have 2 bosses. We have Jennifer, our elected clerk in the Supreme Court. So we've actually transitioned to a complete new email system. We have gone to a new server. We've had lots of difficult transitions. And so those also add to the complexity of, because it might be a week that we're transitioning, and that's time that we don't have to do our jobs, or maybe have the necessity to be able to process those as quickly as we would like.
All right. moving on to our actual personnel requested changes, we'll just start with some super positives with all of these changes. This is actually going to be, as you see, a $76,008 savings. We were really methodical in looking at a 5-year plan. We started this budget process about a year ago with all of our supervisors. And we just came to them and let them know, like, hey, we really want to be efficient with our resources, what we have, and, created this work group, if you will. And everybody took a deep dive into their individual departments and said, okay, what are things we cannot live without? What are things that we need to transition away from to become more efficient? And I feel very proud of the group. We met on a monthly basis over the last year, and I think that they came up with some really great changes. There were, as you can see, a few positions that we are freezing in efforts to fund those changes. I'll just highlight a couple at the very top there. We are requesting that all of our civil and criminal clerks be converted to that from a clerk 2 to a clerk 3. As we started looking at job descriptions, their jobs are, I would say, more complex than our support staff. And we really just wanted to highlight that and promote that within those positions to also help keep retention within those departments. The job descriptions themselves are very complex in that they both have departments of 11 clerks each, but they all rotate. And once they are trained, as Keisha indicated, we have a lot of new staff right at the moment. We feel that we will be in a better system to be able to help process those filings and to be more efficient in those departments. We are requesting that one of our compliance clerks go from a 2 to a 3. It is a smaller department where if the lead clerk is out, there is no one in that department currently. They report to us for questions. So again, this is in an effort to set them up with another clerk that they can go to. We are asking to reclassify our JBC judicial specialist to that the judicial manager. Currently, Keisha and myself do have about 35 direct reports in our judicial staff, that being all of the judges' secretaries, our in-court clerks. And due to our responsibilities and duties expanding as well, the time that it takes for us to get back to them sometimes we feel is not as timely. And so we're hoping in efforts to convert this position that it'll add an extra layer, that we will be able to get more support for the judges, the in-court clerks, when a courtroom goes down, that we will be able to better support them, as well as those procedural changes. And again, just to highlight at the bottom, in an effort to fund our requests, we are asking to freeze those positions that just became vacant, as we had one retire and we promoted another one, leaving that last scanning technician vacant.
Couple of things. So when you're talking about taking the clerks from a 2 to a 3, that's not progression. That's across the board without time and position.
Correct.
That's what the most has to do. They have more responsibilities. So those right now are the clerk 2s are a grade 3. And so we're asking to move those to a grade 4 because of just different rules and responsibilities and the workload too.
And I will note that other than the few that just started, most of the clerks that are in those departments have been anywhere between that 1 to 15-year range. So we do have longevity in those departments, and we're, this is in an effort to keep them in those positions as well.
And they're already doing some of these clerk 3
They are.
jobs.
Yes.
Where they're helping with training even, right? Because there's so much constant turnover in the position that it is, the grade that it is. And so we're asking these people, as people come on board, to help train too, not just the lead and supervisors. It's quite intense with the amount of turnover we can't have in those positions.
And so that, in conjunction with the freezing of the positions, will lead to the same.
Yes,
Correct.
So we
Give
really,
them
I have to really give them props. We really sat down together and we looked at, okay, how do we make the department more efficient? I know we're concerned about turnover and keeping those people and the complexity of the jobs that they're having for civil and criminal too. And so we looked over our overall department, and we had someone retiring that part-time. And then the scanning too, we're trying to reduce that one person at a time. And then we have visions over the next 5 years, probably in the records division too, of how we can transition, either reduce or move people because it's going to require more people at the civil and criminal counter too. So we're looking at that every year to say, hey, what can we reduce or what positions can we move to a department we know that they're servicing for the community in those caseloads.
And this also highlights the increased revenues. We did take a look within those department discussions with our compliance department. And felt confident that we are starting to see that upward trend as we have been able to incorporate those in-house payment plans and just some of those other services within the compliance department. We are starting to see more and more of our constituents opt into those services that we are offering. And so we have seen a slight increase and are hopeful that those numbers will continue for years to come. So. And then this also just kind of provides you a snapshot of our B and C budgets. Again, it's an overall decrease from 26 to 27 by $3,070
For our B budget. And then we're gonna go into this capital request. You wanna go into detail about that, just Bill?
We, due to the expansion and everything else with the new building, and as we've been able to be in it for about a year and kind of see what staff was able to move into that area, we are maxed out. We were only able to move about 13 clerks into the space that we were provided. And so that kind of left us still with that lower level of the justice building where we are maxed out. We've taken out walls, we've converted closets. We've essentially moved as much staff as we can around with what we have. And so we had an opportunity to meet with Jennifer as well as Jeff and kind of go over a workspace planning evaluation of that lower level and just said there's quite a bit of real estate down there, but how do we become more efficient with the space we have so that way we can grow? At this time, we've been down there, the civil and the criminal department, you cannot physically add any more desks to those departments. So we met with them. We had a contractor come in and give us an evaluation estimate. So that's what you see before you. That 18,000 would be for them to come in and put together a complete workspace evaluation of that whole lower level. There's going to be kind of a plan A, plan B situation that might give us an extra courtroom. And so we're just going to look at what that might be able to provide for the future. And again, this is just in an effort so that way, as we know our caseloads are going up and as we know we're going to eventually have to convert or move staff, that this will allow us to do so.
And one of the big thing too is trying to make more space for the counter and civil and criminal. We're likely going to be able with this redesign to add more space to service customers on there at that point. And right now, I think Brandy has this 18,000 funded with interest, right? But I do, and the fund balance currently, restricted fund balance for the clerk side of district court, there's $1.8 million. So any future projects likely would come from there. And then you guys can decide based on how things line up, whether it's going to be interest or fund balance that we can utilize if you guys proceed forward with this project.
Sure. Restricted fund balance. How much space did you gain with the expansion and moving clerks over to that side?
About 13 desks.
And so that's not enough to get you.
So when the two buildings were conjoined, we lost that whole department where our floats were. So those 12 people moved over there with 3 judges and their secretaries. So we were maxed out before we even moved in. This would essentially just be able to allow to add additional 2 civil or criminal.
Any questions? Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we have our county assistance budget, which is quite a small budget. I can start off and show you where we're projecting revenue. This department no longer does medical claims. It used to be the care of last resort, hospital and people that went to the hospital or medical claims, and that law was changed, I believe in 21, and it was implemented in 22. So right now we're still collecting on people that have had claims paid by the county. There's 0% interest loan, and we also, some of these claims, there were liens on property. And so when properties go to sell and there's still money that's owed to the county, that money is retrieved, and we'll see that in the other sheet regarding our fund balance, or excuse me, what we get for revenue. So the first page is just our involuntary police holds. That is just a smaller number versus our medical claims, but we're anticipating anticipating a $2,000 budget increase for actually adopted budget for that. Fortunately, for the next one, we're speaking right now, as you can see, the actual is $869,000. We do have money coming in monthly, but what you'll see the trends over the last few years is when people have paid off outstanding claims when they sold a house. And so that can be hit or miss. So I want to start adjusting that down to make sure as we have more payments, there's going to be less payouts, I'd say, over time of these houses and liens. So I want to adjust that down because I don't want the county anticipating that revenue in the future years and it's not coming in. So we've adjusted it down from 210 based on what we're seeing for 2026 actual trends. And then it's going down to 170 for fiscal year 27. That's a $40,000 reduction. Now we could still have, like I said, those claims that come in and pay, they sell a house, but that's just not guaranteed. It's hit or miss.
Question, is there a seasonality to this revenue?
No. So it's basically, she gets a notice from a title company, hey, there's a lien on this property. And so it could be January, February, July. It's just extra income, but we can't anticipate, okay, this year we're gonna have 4 payouts. Can't anticipate that.
But you were underestimating in previous years.
Yes.
This year, it seems like.
Well, I'm looking at the trend. So each year I look at where we're at now and we're just not having as many payouts right now. So what I don't want to happen is the county's relying on that revenue because it's still self-sufficient, this department, and using that $40,000 somewhere else and it doesn't come in. So I'm just trying to have a realistic expectation because it is likely going to slow down as people pay off or other claims or these liens are paid off.
What's your cutoff on the actual 2026? Is it March?
I mean, I can do it until
No, I'm just.
Oh,
curious to know.
today. That number is actually it was Friday.
Friday.
That 94,000. Yeah, so I've been watching it. We're expecting some claims for payout, but it's just like I said, there's no guarantee. It could be 5 next year, it could be 1, it could be 2.
Yep.
And how much that is depends to what was actually.
Do you know how many claims actually exist right now?
I think this year was it about 2 or 3 big ones, because some are police holds that we get claims pay off, but I don't know the exact amount.
There might be a couple. I mean, sometimes I receive something from a title company saying, can we have a payoff good through date, a month later, and then I don't hear anything back, so it did go through or something.
But how many total outstanding claims do we have?
Oh, in the system, well, it's what we send out for payment, right?
Yeah.
She sends me that, right? I don't have that on top of my head. I do, I can see that trend. It's trending down. So after 5 years, if they don't pay on it, we can no longer send a bill for collection on that. I think the police holds, that's a medical side. For the police holds, it's 4 years. So they're starting to trend down. Either people are paying it off or we just can't send out bills anymore.
Right.
But I can give you that number.
Right, but if you don't send out bills, you still receive the payment once the asset is.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, and then do we have that balance where we're looking at, okay, it's self-sufficient now, it'll be self-sufficient for the next, or self-sustaining for the next 3-4 years? And we have that tipping point?
Yes. So, I mean, right now it's still self-sufficient. I don't have the A budget, but we have 1 employee in that department. But you see the B budget's 33,000. Yeah, Brandon can pull up the A budget, but it's still self-sufficient with the 170 anticipated, and then I think the 16,000 for the police officers. But I will make you guys aware of that as time goes on and this becomes where it's not self-sustainable. It's that we have maybe more people doing more than one job in the clerk's division and shifting as people retire too. So on our B budget here, it is going up $3,845. And the reason why is cremation burial. That's another one and we just can't predict. If they qualify, we have to pay for that. And so and I have the next page, I can show that trend. Kind of like the applications we see versus when Wendy does her research, what we pay out. And so we're already paid out more in fiscal year 26, 19 cremation approvals versus fiscal year 25, we paid 18 out. So, and I'm trying to estimate that. I don't want to estimate too high. We did transfer, I think, a total of 40,000 in there now. But if I can come before the board, like I did this year, that's what I prefer to do instead of just budgeting a number every time. So we may hit it, we may not hit it. So that went up, that budget, P budget, $3,845 because of that. And then that next slide just here just shows you, what we receive cremation applications and what they're approved. So we're trending likely, we're gonna probably approve more, cremation applications than we did in fiscal year 24 and 25. Then we're on to recorder. So I got one in here, our recording manager, she's kind of gonna go over the details of the recorder's office and the work that they do.
So the recorder's office is responsible for recording documents for public record pursuant to Idaho code. Documents are submitted by e-recording, by mail, and also over the counter. In doing so, with recording documents for public record, we have to data enter every document. There is a second verification to make sure that the data entered for that document is correct. And then we also are responsible for issuance of marriage licenses. We assist the public with receiving certified copies of marriage licenses. Also, we are responsible for issuing beverage licenses for the county. And we also assist customers with researching public records. All of our documents go back to the late 1800s. So we have time to time where people will come in and we have to help them research. Sometimes they want to go all the way back to the beginning. So that's a lot of time intensive. We provide free notary service to the public. We also archive historical documents. So what that means is we are taking our old documents and getting them into our current system so they're accessible for the public to research. We record plats and surveys, and those are also uploaded to our recorder website. We also process passport applications at the directive of the Department of State. And this requires an annual certification training, and this is not state mandated. And it can take up to 6 months to a year to fully train for this department due to the amount of services that we provide.
Here's just a snapshot of what we're anticipating for fiscal year 27 for revenue. We've been slightly increasing over the years, which is good. We had some good years in like 2020 and 2021, but it's, you can see that it's starting to trend back up again for what we're receiving for particularly the House Bill 521 reporting fee and the reporting fees. So with that, we're anticipating $110,050 overall increase of all of those revenues with quarters. And there's just another trend of showing kind of where we're at with that revenue, kind of slowed down. I'm starting to pick back up again. And then our B budget's pretty simple. It's only $3,553. We reduced it by $1,297 from this year 26 to 27. And then one thing I do want to show in this division is just what they bring in for revenue versus their operating A&B budget. You can see in fiscal year 25, they brought $920,550. The adopted A&B budget was $491,580. Fiscal year 26, revenues were adopted at $984,300. And the A&B budget adopted was $459,986. And then for anticipation for fiscal year 27, we're proposing, like I said, that revenue for $1,104,350. And yet their AP budget is right now at $530,550. And so with that, we're seeing a lot of changes to the recorder division. It's hard for us where there's turnover and there's the amount of work that the counter and customer service. And so I just want to show that the amount of work that they do and money that they bring into the county on top of all of their A&B budget that is then divided into other elected some departments. And then Lisa? Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so I'd like to talk to you about the elections fiscal year 2027 budget proposal. So we're going to go over three things today. First is just some updates to some data, which I presented some of that to you last year, and I'm updating that and then providing some additional data. And then we'll go into the revenues and the expenses. So we are the third largest county by registered voters in the state of Idaho. As of June 1st of this year, we have 111,344 registered voters. We continue to trend just about 4,000 registered voters behind Canyon County. That seems to fluctuate between like 4,500 and 3,800, depending on the month of the year. We seem to get more election day registrations than they do, so we kind of play catch up a little bit after each election. You can see our registered voters going back to 2014 and how that has trended up. We saw large periods of growth between 2018 and 2021. The presidential election of 2020 brought us that biggest bump between 2020 and 2021. And then we're just consistently growing from there. Just as we know that growth around COVID brought people into Idaho from a lot of larger cities as people were able to work remotely. We're seeing the same thing here with our registered voters, and that's also reflected in our county's population, which, as was mentioned before, is up to 191,864 people as of the July 1st, 2025 US Census Bureau estimates. So when you compare our population to our registered voters, and I want to make clear that this is our total population, not the population that are eligible to register to vote based on age or legal qualifications. We, as of 2025, are at 57.41% of our population are registered voters. So if you think about how many of those would be under the age of 18, then the percentage goes up even dramatically from there. We have a very engaged populace. And Brandy, if you move to the next slide, that can be shown in the fact that even though we are the second or the third largest county by registered voters and population in the state, we consistently see more ballots cast than Canyon County. And that happened in November of 2025, where we had 4,700 approximately more ballots cast in Canyon County. And while I don't have the data for Canyon County in here for May, our May ballots cast, which are on the next slide here, show that we had 35,744 ballots cast in our county. And I do know that our absentee and early voting was outpacing Canyon County. I don't know what their final numbers after they canvassed were, but I believe we did have more ballots cast than they did in their county as well. There is a separate large page of this key functions document that you have at your spot as well, because I know it's probably not the easiest to read on this page. I just want to cover a couple of things. I'm not going to read everything on here, but we regularly get the question, what does the elections department do? It's not election day. And my standard response is that every election takes about 3 months of preparation and a month and a half of tear down or put away just to do the election process. That doesn't include a lot of these things that we do on a regular basis, like process voter registrations, remove voters who have moved out of state or who are deceased or who are no longer eligible because of a conviction from our rolls, updating people's voters upon request, even outside of registration, such as just party affiliation changes. We do, as every department pretty much does, public records requests. We process absentee ballot applications. Right now, we're in the middle of continuing to process initiative signatures because the deadline for us to process those is the end of June. So we have some things are cyclical, like our election cycle and like petition processes, and other things we do on a regular basis, like voter registrations, public records requests, retention, things like that. So we do have a lot of different processes beyond just election day. One of the things we do is we conduct elections for over 50 taxing districts, and we share some of those districts with neighboring counties. So even though we are a county function and we coordinate a lot with the state in Boise, we also have to coordinate a lot with our neighbors in order to conduct these elections. So a great example of this is our fire districts. We have 10 total fire districts that we conduct elections for. 4 of these districts are joint with neighboring counties. That would be the Spirit Lake Fire District, Timberlake Fire District, Shoshone Fire District number 2, which is now going to be known as Silver Valley Fire and Rescue going forward, and then also the St. Mary's Fire Protection District. We also conduct elections for 6 school districts, and 4 of these are shared with neighboring counties. I think most people are aware that We share Plummer Worley with Benawa, we share Kellogg with Shoshone, we share Lakeland with Bonner. But what a lot of people may not know is that we do share Kootenai Joint School District with Benawa County. There's just that little tiny chunk that goes into Benawa that we do coordinate with them for that school district as well. Additional joint districts are Bayview Water and Sewer District, which we share with Bonner, Cataldo Water District, which we share with Shoshone, the Consolidated Free Library District, also known as the Community Library Network, we share that with Shoshone, Kingston Cataldo Sewer District, and Kootenai Shoshone Soil and Water Conservation District, which are obviously both shared with Shoshone as well. And again, just the level of coordination, it's not just one election here or there. It's almost every election that we conduct, we are sharing some district with a neighboring county, and we're making sure that we're coordinating with that county on ballot design to make sure that our verbiage is the same when we get levy language from a school district. We have to make sure that not only are we following the state's directives on how to title things, but okay, how is your title reading? Are you putting this exact phrasing in here? We're trying to make sure that we can match as best as possible with our neighboring counties on all of these items.
I'd like to just say something real quick.
Yeah.
Since we saw the trend for the population and registered voters, but since 2013, we remained the same 5-employee department. We do bring on temps like we did before that. But I'm just proud of the work with the systems and efficiencies and what the board is bringing us to allow us to become more efficient. So I'd like to give a shout out to my team, even though registration and population has increased, we've stayed the same over this basically 12 to 13 years of staff of 5 full-time employees.
So now I'd like to dive into our revenues a little bit. So one thing that is nice is our revenues are pretty consistent, at least as long as costs are going up, because they're tied to the consumer price index. So the state's total revenue pool that is distributed out to the counties for election consolidation goes up based on the CPI every year. And so when there's inflation, we're seeing an increase to the overall pool. The distribution within that pool, every county gets a set $50,000 distribution, and the remainder is distributed based on percentage of the state population. We're fortunate that our population is pretty stable as a percentage of the state as a whole. Since the whole state is growing, even though we're growing, we're not seeing ourselves become a much bigger share of the pie, but we're also not becoming a smaller share of the pie by any real amount. We're staying pretty consistent. So when those population numbers increase, and then when the CPIU increases, it leads to our revenue increasing. So right now, our current fiscal year, we are actually on track to come in for fiscal year 2026 ahead of what was budgeted by about $3,200. With where inflation is based on the latest CPIU numbers from May, we are going to be able to easily have a revenue increase of $20,000 almost this year. So we're budgeting $435,000 in what we'll receive from the state in revenues. That may even turn out to be a conservative number depending on if fuel costs stay high. The state will pull this number at the beginning of July or the beginning of August for July's numbers. I'm not sure which, but it's based at the beginning of their budget cycle. So, and it will carry throughout the whole fiscal year for the state. So if oil prices remain where they are through the month of July, there's a very good chance that our revenues may even come in a few thousand higher than this, but so I feel very confident in where this number is. Our aid budget, Jennifer, did you want to touch on this at all?
Yeah, I just, with the promotion of that director and manager, we've been able to cut, because one person became rent, the overtime and then the temporary season to like $10,500 this year.
And then going into our B, C, and D budgets, we really want to highlight how we're trying to stay consistent and we're trying to be responsible with taxpayer dollars while also meeting the necessary services that we are mandated to perform for the state and for our county. So there is a lot of fluctuation in our B budget this year, and I'll go over some notable items here in a moment. What I do want to highlight is that overall, the B budget is going down by $6,218. The C budget, obviously, we don't have any new capital requests for our department this year. And then the D budget is our precinct central contract for our e-public services. We're in I believe we're in year 3 now of a 4-year contract. Wow, the time goes by. And that is staying flat again this year through next fiscal year as well. So our B budget is going down, and we really took a hard look at our budget this year, especially with our upcoming capital purchase, which will be coming before the board in a couple weeks regarding, which you're aware, we just published for sole source recently. That is going to shift how we do operations. And so with that, I want to go into some of these notable items on how this is going to change things. So our election supplies, we have a $21,841 decrease due to the removal of ES&S election programming costs. So previously, while we've been on the system from ES&S has done all of our ballot layout and programming, and we have paid based on the number of ballot styles, candidates, contests, precincts, multiple different things. So that was a large chunk of our budget. We would have had a larger offset of the removal of those costs, except for the fact that right now with this transition, we have to budget for both the blank ballot stock as we shift to print on demand and pre-printed ballots, because we have to have a larger amount of backup ballots as we move to the new technology. My hope is that as we go through this transition period, which I expect will last 2 to 3 budget years, that you will be able to see some of those costs shift in these line items between the pre-printed and the print on demand. We'll always have to have some amount of backup pre-printed ballots, but it won't be a full set or a 3/4 set. It'll be smaller amounts. And as we roll out print on demand to more and more precincts, because our plan is not to roll it out to every precinct right away, we'll be able to, again, see those costs shift. So we were able to decrease this line item because of the ES&S election programming cost removal, but we do have to account for these extra ballot costs right now. That also ties into our printing supplies, which is $18,900 is what I have in that line item for ballot on demand printing supplies this year. So of course, just basic things, toner for these printers. And as we can see how these supplies last, we have an idea of how many ballots they can print, but putting that into reality of what does that look like for early voting, where we can maybe use a high yield cartridge because we're printing a lot of ballots and they're not going to sit there and dry out for a few months, versus election day where we may have to use smaller amount cartridges again so that we aren't wasting supplies. We can hopefully know what that looks like in the future years better after this year, but this is kind of our initial get going for this year set. And then our non-capital equipment, we do need some additional shelving to help support the new HART system, the storing of those supplies, and our blank ballot stock that we will be purchasing. The good news, I think this is good news, is that I'll actually be coming before you on the business meeting tomorrow to ask to buy this out of this year's fiscal finances, because we have money left over in this year's budget. So this will be able, pending your approval, to be removed from next year's budget and will decrease our B budget by another $7,686. Couple other notable items. We do have a small increase to our telephone line item of $2,759. That's because now that we are on the new T-Mobile service, we actually have very clear costs of what that costs us when we turn our jetpacks on for an election, how many months they're on, and what our control center that lets us turn those on and off from our office costs for the whole year. When we were previously on Verizon, it was honestly very difficult to budget this line item. The costs were not clearly delineated of what we'd be charged. Things would be, we'd turn them off for a period of time, be told by our rep that we could do a suspend without billing for $1 or this or that, and then it would never go into effect. So then we'd get a bill, then we'd have to get a credit, then all of the different things that we never knew exactly what the budget was going to actually come out in the actuals at the end of the year. Now we can clearly budget for this, and that led to a small increase here to lay that out completely. And then our computer hardware maintenance line item. This is where our annual ES&S contract for support and maintenance for our tabulators and our ADA equipment and things lived before in this line item. Now this has transitioned over to cover 3 months of our new HART annual contract. So when we come before you for the purchase of the capital equipment, you'll see the full year cost. I think it's about $144,000 of annual fees with the HART contract. We are hoping to be able to come before you with that the 23rd of this month, which means based on what Hardest told us, we'll be able to take delivery actually probably as soon as the second week of July. So and the first year of the contract is included in the purchase. So this would cover the 3 remaining months next year, July, August, September, to put us on that August 1st timeline, or not August, October 1st timeline for fiscal year 28. We can budget the full amount at that point and hopefully see some of that offset again in our election supplies line item. So that's where that is. And then if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Questions? None? Thank you very much.
Best for last.
Yeah.
Audit department. Okay, so as you all know, the audit department is a mandated service under Idaho law. Some of the things that we have to do, we have to compile and enforce the county budget. We are responsible for the financial statement audit, the CEPA, which is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. We have to abide by generally accepted accounting principles and governmental accounting standards. We're responsible for revenue collections and billings countywide, accounts payable, grant accounting, property tax accounting, establishing and maintaining internal controls and helping assist set financial policy, and then also significant financial analysis for departments and elected officials. In case you're interested in the detail, this is the changes per line item in the auditor's B, C, and D budget. Our B budget is going down by $115,184. That's partially due to the $110,000 decrease from the consultant that we were budgeted in FY26. That was funded with fund balance. And we're currently in the middle of that consulting process with IT and the software consultant. And then the other $8,000 increase is just a combination of decreases across almost every other line in our budget. We do have a $2.2 million capital request, which I will present here in a moment. And then our D budget, which is our software lease for DevBook, the software we use to track all of the county's software agreements and leases. That is going down by $15,000. Our deputy finance director Keith was able to renegotiate that contract with the vendor, and so it went from $30,000 to $15,000. So that was a big win for our budget for next year. We have no requests for personnel. I already talked about the decrease to our B budget, and then as well as our D budget decreasing by $15,000. So the only ask from the auditor's office is really this capital request. And this is being made in coordination with the IT department. I did send the estimates to Grant and Jack, and they preferred that the upfront costs of this request be budgeted in the auditor's budget, and the ongoing costs be budgeted in its. So I'm only presenting for our request the upfront costs. So the auditor's office is requesting $2,233,000. And as you know, we're in the midst of this consulting agreement with the software consultant, the auditor's office and IT, to explore going to a new ERP system that stands for Enterprise Resource something. That's basically our main finance system for the county, as well as the main system for the HR department. That's essentially our HR, I guess, as well. So the project team is audit, IT, and HR. And now that we have the HR director, it's been awesome to bring her into that process as well. So the consultant gave us an estimate on the low end to go to a new system. One-time cost would be $1,057,000. And then the high end was 3.49 million. So that would be a one-time implementation costs and the travel for the vendor. And if we were to have an implementation consultant, I just split it down the middle and requested the medium amount. You know, I'm willing to discuss that with the board. I think my laptop's about to die. So I'll just go quickly. Up above, I also included how much the county spent back in 2007 and 2008 when we went to New World. The upfront cost for $781,000. In addition, we did pay $47,000 of equipment purchases at that time. And then we're paying anywhere from $150,000 to $170,000 a year in maintenance. And so, yes, I wanted to make this request in the 27 budget cycle so that the board isn't surprised when I come forward next spring and summer with this request. In speaking with the consultant and the project timeline, our goal is to issue an RFP this fall or winter. And then over the winter and into the spring, choose the new vendor and start laying out the implementation schedule. In the midst of this consulting process, it has been very eye-opening to sit with different departments, and the way we've been doing it is having one team per module in the system. So like we have a team just for accounts payable, and that is people from my office as well as the larger departments in the county. And every module in the system, it's been very eye-opening to see how many departments are doing so many of their processes in Excel on their own drive and not in the system, and to see some of the manual things that we're doing. So I think that us and IT are all in agreement that this is the direction we want to go. I know that I've talked to the IT director and he's supportive of that. And the new HR director and I have talked about how in 5 years, we're really going to be expected to have a system that has AI functionalities, business intelligence, and forecasting functionalities. And I know that that's something that the clerk wants as well. So this is the request. Currently, it's being funded with $500,000 of interest, 1.7 million fund balance. And then the ongoing costs in IT's budget are being funded currently with property tax. We could consider funding the first year with fund balance, since it's a high level estimate. And I estimate from talking to the consultant, implementation would be anywhere from 1 to 3 years. So, and then I already talked about one-time cost to the auditor budget. And then just lastly, the only revenues that the auditor's office receives is an interfund transfer from solid waste for services we provide to them. They pay for 10% of the auditor's personnel budget, which in FY27 is $212,000. So, any questions?
Thank you. Any questions?
Just that we did not separate out the 2 million in our fund balance exercise.
What 2 million in fund balance exercise?
Well, for the new ERP.
We did not set aside a specific assigned fund balance for a new system. So this would be having to come from the master plan fund balancing.
What are we getting with this new software? I mean, I realize the current software is old. It sounds like people are pulling data out, massaging it with Excel spreadsheets and then putting it back in. Does it lead to needing less personnel as we continue to grow, or?
I think that what we're seeing is in a lot of departments, staff levels have inflated because so many processes are done manually. So perhaps long term, that could lead to savings in personnel. Part of what we're doing right now is actually compiling estimates on cost savings. So per module in the system, coming up with it as a team with all of the manual processes we're doing right now, and if they could be automated, how much time that could save us, and that will equate to dollars saved in personnel time. So we're in the middle of that right now, but that is all data that I plan to present to the board before we were to pick a new system.
I think that would be important to show that cost benefit analysis.
For sure, and I just didn't want to surprise the board, that this is coming next spring and summer. So I requested it now with the possibility of it being in the budget if the board were to approve it. If not, this request is still gonna come forward, in a little less than a year. So I just want you to know that it's coming, and if I was trying to not surprise you. So obviously, these are very high level estimates, because we don't have a specific vendor in mind yet. My goal was to just try to be proactive and have something there as a placeholder, because this will obviously fluctuate depending on vendor selection.
Any other questions? Questions? What's next?
I think we're done. I'm sorry. I don't know, yeah. Prosecuting. Yeah, but it's, you guys want to continue.
Yeah, we'll take a break. We can deem. First of all, thank you. Second, I very much appreciate the level of detail in the illustrations. And kind of just articulating your challenges and trend lines and things like that. It's obvious you put a lot of thought into it. Then having your department heads each discuss the various aspects of your job, I think is very helpful. So thank you.
And I want to thank my team too. We sit down, a chief deputy clerk, myself with each of our department heads and say, hey, what are we looking at? How do we become more efficient? So there's a lot of give and take on it. And I think we came up with a good one again this year. And tried to reduce where we can.
So you want to break till 2 o'clock when Stan's scheduled to come?
Do you think he might be able to come a little earlier at 1:30? We would take a break till 2. If that's what he was expecting, then sure. Okay, so it's 11:49 and we will recess until 2 p.m. Thank you.